Hi, I'm Dan Schinder.
And I'm Steven Schinder.
And we are celebrating Chris Squire and Billy Sherwood's birthdays here on Yesshift. What the heck is Yesshift, Steve?
It's a father-son podcast. I'm the son, you're the dad, and we talk about Yes, people who've been in Yes, and people associated with Yes. And yeah, like you said, today is Chris Squire's birthday. He was born March 4th, 1948. And Billy Sherwood's birthday is on March 14th. He was born in 1965. We figured it made perfect sense to just, do an episode on both of them, of their collaborative relationship over the years.
Yeah, they were great friends. They did a lot of work together, maybe even more than you folks know about. So we're going to fly through their chronology and share some photos and some nuggets and some memories. And we encourage you to chime in and do the same as well. So, Steve, where do we start?
Yeah, so we'll do that, and we'll even touch on a little bit of Billy news at the end. But first, off the top, a couple posts from Chris's bandmates. So Alan White, of course, he's worked a lot with Chris over the years. He recently posted a very touching post about one of his bandmates, Don Aston, from the Downbeats from back in the 60s. It was really nice. But just today, he also posted about Chris. I'll just read some of this. He says, "There are so many things I miss. His wicked wit, his unapologetic and honest approach to life, his frank but fair nature, extraordinary talent and musical collaboration, his unique style, but most of all, I miss his friendship. I miss being able to pick up the phone, to call and ask his opinion on any given subject. He would always give me a straight answer, even if it wasn't the one I was looking for. These past few years have been extremely challenging in many ways, and I often think to myself, what would Chris do given the circumstances? I hope he would be pleased with the direction the band is headed, carrying on, continuing to create Yes music, always moving forward as were his wishes. I hope he is at peace, watching over us and cheering us on. I hope to honor his legacy. With love, Alan." And he also gives credit to Jerry and Lois Levin Photography for capturing the photos he included in his Facebook post. It's a very nice, touching, really encapsulates Alan and Chris's friendship. And we also have a tweet from Jeff Downs. Did you want to read that one, or should I?
Go ahead. I'm setting up to monitor comments, and then I have something to share about Alan and Chris that Alan told me once.
All right, cool. So Jeff says, "Happy birthday to a dear friend, the late, great, super talented Chris Squire. Privileged to have shared the same stage with you. Miss you, buddy." And he included this nice picture of himself on the guitar, and like he and Chris are like kind of facing each other. It's really nice to see these tribute posts from Chris's bandmates. He left such a mark on many people's lives. And I mean, even the fans, I saw that Miguel Bass over on YouTube posted a video about Chris's Rickenbacker, like his signature edition bass, I think. And yeah, it's really cool.
Absolutely. And folks, I'm trying to do my best with bringing these pictures up on the screen, and they weren't exactly sized perfectly, but regarding Alan's words on Chris, I remember interviewing Alan at the NAMM show, the most recent NAMM show after Chris had passed. And I said, if you don't want to talk about this, it's okay, but what is it like, life without Chris? And he said 3 words. He said, he was my brother. Mm-hmm. It's like, there's really not much else to say. You got to remember that Alan's been with them since 1972.
Yeah.
That's the decades together. And think of all the time on the road and recording and just getting together and all the changes they went through, all the changes since 1972. I can't even imagine off the top of my head, is that 12 lineups, Steve, or something like that? And
yeah,
all that.
Some crazy number. Yeah.
Yeah. How many times did they look at each other and say, not again? I mean, seriously.
Yeah, because they never left, really.
That's right. Rick's out. Patrick is in. Patrick is out. Rick is back. Rick and John are out. Trevor
Rick and Backer.
yeah. And Backer and Jeff and Trevor in, and then the whole thing just goes away, and then they come back with this other Trevor guy and Tony and Papa and Eddie Jobson and Francis Monkman, and it just goes on and on. It goes on and on, and so. I think as fans, we sometimes forget about that. We see them on the stage, we see them on the records, and we forget that if they're close and they've been together for decades doing that stuff, there's more to their lives than just stepping into the studio and stepping on stage,
Yeah, like you said, they were brothers, and Chris and Billy saw each other as brothers as well, and. Yeah, so I guess we'll go through the chronology of Chris and Billy's association. So they met in the mid to late 80s, and Chris actually provided backing vocals on the song Sense of Freedom on the first World Trade album, of course, the band that Billy was part of at the time. And they worked on a few songs together for Yes back in that weird period when Billy was considered as a potential lead vocalist for the band.
Yeah, I remember, I've told this story before on the show. I was at Alan's house when he lived in West Hills, California, and I was playing him some music that I had just recorded, and he said, so we're working with this guy who I think is going to be in the band. Have you ever heard of World Trade? And I said, no. And he got, I'm pulling the picture up, he got the album out, and this is a different album.
But it's their second one, which is going to be reissued. Yeah.
Right. And he pointed out the lineup. There was a photograph. He said, this guy, his name's Billy Sherwood. He's a multi-instrumental. And I thought, I mean, my response was, huh. And then after that came the Roger Hodgson thing. And that's when they were going out to Phoenix and working with him a bit. And then Chris moved out to Phoenix. And, it was a weird period where stuff was just ever changing and not even very... Nothing was happening, but a lot was changing. Does that make sense?
Yeah. And so Billy co-wrote the songs Love Conquers All, Say Goodbye, and The More We Live. And The More We Live is the one that ended up on Union. Instead of Billy singing, they got John to do the vocals on the final version. But Billy, Chris still wanted Billy to play bass on it, which I thought was really cool.
Yeah. Yeah. And I want to point out that Chris's voice is very unique. I think the closest person out there that sounds like him, anything like him at all, is Sting. When the Police first came out, I thought, hey, that guy sounds like he's doing a Chris Squire thing. But Billy and Chris's voices blend so well together. I like them at least as much as Trevor Rabin and Chris's voices.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm just looking at the comments real quick. Someone named Bud Staten says, listening in Texas. Hey, thanks for listening.
Yeah, tell us where you're watching from. Steve's in Bakersfield, California. I'm in Globe, Arizona. If it sounds like we're rushing through this episode, we kind of are. Because I have something I have to do right at the top of this hour if you're watching live. So we've got a lot to cover because after all, it's Chris Squire, not only the founder of Yes, co-founder of Yes, but one of the greatest bass players ever, one of the greatest prog musicians ever, one of the greatest, in my opinion, backing vocalists ever. And I loved when he would do songs where he sang lead, and he was really the quintessential rock star. When you look at, he had such a big stature, his stage presence, his clothing, he loved to party back in the day. He was always late. There's a lot about Chris where if someone said, hey, Grandpa, what's the best example of a rock star in the 70s? Chris is at the top of that list for me. I mean, there's Robert Plant, there's Jimmy Page, there's Roger Dahl, there are all these people, but Chris had it all. He really did,
Yeah, I saw recently that he was on a Guitar World list of top bassists, and yeah, so he definitely has a high reputation out there. For me, there are lots of bassists that I really love, Geddy Lee, Greg Lake, John Wetton, all these people. But because Chris has been on most of my favorite songs that I've listened to the most, I'm biased. He's my favorite bass player. So yeah, like I love all those people, but I guess he's my favorite, you know?
Yeah. Well, Katie Lee started with a Rickenbacker back in the day because of Chris Squire. It was him
Yeah.
and John Entwistle that were his biggest influences, and John Paul Jones as well. But there's a lot of similarity in some ways between the way Entwistle and Squire played. They made the bass a melodic instrument and not just the rudimental foundation holding the bottom end. You know, Chris has done leads on the bass, you know?
Yeah. Like it's funny how Chris has, like, in the past, he told the story of how it was so bizarre seeing all his heroes like John Entwistle and other people when he was doing a gig in the late 60s.
Yeah.
And now like later on people would feel the same way about Chris. Like he's that big to them, you know?
Yeah.
And so of course, lots of Yes fans are familiar with Fish Out of Water, phenomenal album. For the longest time, it was Chris's only solo album up until Swiss Choir. But I remember, I watched this clip like sometime within the last few months. But in the Yes Years documentary, Chris said, yeah, that was my first solo album. I'm thinking of doing another one next year. And of course, in 1992, he does this tour with Billy and Jimmy Hahn and Alan White and a couple other people titled The Chris Squire Experiment. And so It has the song Wish I Knew, you know, an early version of Open Your Eyes and some other stuff that would end up on Conspiracy. And there are a couple bootleg videos of it on YouTube from like San Jose and San Diego. And they're not the best audio quality, but they still are worth checking out. Like the songs sound good to my ears, and it's just nice to have documentation of that in some fashion.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and I think back then some people were calling it the Chris Squire Experience. I guess kind of mixing it up with the Jimi Hendrix Experience, you know, the wording. And in a Notes from the Edge interview much later, Chris even said, I had delusions of Jimi Hendrix. So there you go.
Funny.
But then we get Billy on the Talk Tour in 1994. That was kind of weird, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I was there, saw him at the Greek Theater, and out comes Billy. And when he played the bass with Chris, that was really cool. Two bass players, and for that to be okay with someone of Chris's stature. And like you said, asked Billy to still play bass on that other song. Yeah, that says a lot about the kind of person he was, you know?
Yeah. And it was around this time on World Trade's second album, which came out in 95, Euphoria, which has got to be reissued on April 8th with the new artwork we showed earlier.
It's up now, too, yeah.
Okay, yeah. Chris guested on the songs The Evolution and Say Goodbye, the latter one being one of the Yes songs we mentioned.
Yeah.
Then like Billy and Chris kept working on stuff together. They were gonna call their album Chemistry. I guess it was still gonna be under the Chris Squire Experiment name, so it makes, you know, wordplay, chemistry. It's kind of funny.
Mm-hmm.
But then we get like this weird shakeup going on with Yes. You know, after their classic lineup reunited, Rick leaves again and they're not really sure what to do. So they kind of take a break. And Billy, he's mixing the Keys to Ascension 2 stuff, but he also really didn't want to see his favorite band fall apart. So he took the initiative to, he's working with Chris and they're like, let's try to put some stuff together. And it's a common misconception that most of Open Your Eyes comes from their Conspiracy material. It's really just the title track and Man in the Moon that was from that material. But
Right.
like they try to work on stuff together that's not just from Conspiracy. But I do think that album does have a lot of Billy and Chris's influence. So like not as balanced as maybe the latter, but yeah, that was kind of an odd time. You know, you get the Keys stuff and then very shortly after Open Your Eyes, and it's maybe not what people expected to be the next thing right away.
Yeah, I think I'd love to read other fans' comments. So chime in whether you're watching live or on the archive, but I think some of the disrespect that Open Your Eyes has gotten does have to do with that, Steve. I think it has to do with the timing. Here you got the classic lineup, you got Keys Studio, you got Keys Live, and then this thing comes out that's diametrically opposed musically in a lot of ways to what people would have expected to happen next. I think that's part of it. But that album on its own, I really believe is a great album. And I saw the tour. It was twice. It was fantastic. They sounded so good. And there's even songs on Open Your Eyes they didn't play that I would have wanted to see. Fortune Seller, New State of Mind. There's two I can't think of right now. I'm sorry. But there's some beautiful music on that. And some rocking music on that. And it is prog. I don't care what anybody says. Prog doesn't mean it has to be something you can't dance to without hurting your hip. It doesn't mean it has to be an 11/8 time signature or something. And I like that album. And I loved that Chris's backup vocals are almost like right there with the lead, really duetting on the choruses of Open Your Eyes and the overlays of the lines and stuff like that. I can't say enough about it, so I won't.
Yeah, it's definitely, I think people have come around on it over time because, it all depends on when you listen to it, I guess. And
I don't know. Yeah, I don't know. I guess it's different for everybody,
Right. I'll read a few comments real quick. Michael Leslie says, great idea for an episode. And Amy DeZera says, yep, it's like a brotherhood. And yeah, they definitely felt like, well, I don't know if it's in reference to Chris and Alan or Chris and
Where are you
Billy,
reading that?
On the Drum Talk TV thing.
Oh, okay. And I'm watching it on Yesshift. Okay, so you're watching the Drum Talk TV share, and I'm watching.
Yeah, I mean, I'm toggling back and forth.
Okay, cool. Hey, thanks for joining us, Drum Talk TV fans. Appreciate it.
Yeah. So they do the ladder, and that's more well received. And then Billy leaves Yes in 2000, but he and Chris still work on Conspiracy together, putting out 2 albums in 2000 and 2003, the latter one being titled The Unknown. You've listened to some of this before, right, Dad?
Yeah, absolutely. Maybe I'm too much in love with what they do because I don't have any negativity towards, like, just give me a Yes configuration and I'm happy. I mean, yeah, there's stuff I might not be as fond of as certain things, but then any side project that any of them do, I've always been really interested in. And I haven't heard anything that truly disappointed me because I've learned to go in with no expectations. And honestly, that started with Going for the One. Like when Going for the One came out, I was like, what's with all these short songs? Before I even heard them, you pull out the album and you can see the grooves where the songs are separated. And I'm like, what's this? But I learned that it's not about that. And prog isn't always about length either. So I've become over time much, much, much more flexible. And now I'll just take it all. I love it.
Yeah, the Conspiracy stuff definitely sounds more, I guess, modern. Some of it is quicker pace, which I really like, especially the title track on The Unknown.
And it has its own sound, which is cool too. Yeah.
I think if people enjoy Open Your Eyes, they can expect Conspiracy to be like that minus John and Steve and some of the Yes-isms, but like, the more modern sounding Billy and Chris stuff that they contribute, like it's on there in that Conspiracy stuff. It's great.
Absolutely. It gave him a place to do that too, which is fine.
Yeah. And so over the years, Chris and Billy stay friends, but they don't do Conspiracy. But Chris performed on the title track of Billy's 2015 solo album, Citizen.
Yeah.
Yeah, I listened to that earlier. It's really good. Billy also helped with some of the mixing on Heaven and Earth. So, he's still associated with Yes at that point. But with Chris going through his illness, he asked Billy to fill in for him on the tour in 2015. And at that time, like, we didn't know. Like, I thought that Chris was gonna, I didn't know what was gonna happen with Chris. I thought he'd at least live to see Billy filling in for him on that tour, and then we'll see what happens. But when Chris passed away in June of that year, I was surprised, and I remember telling you on the phone, you're like, "Oh my God!" Like, we were both just shocked.
Yeah.
But I do think that Billy has done a pretty good job carrying on for Chris. That really hit the band when it happened. But, Chris asked Billy to fill in, and he's been honoring him, I think. And lots of fans, not all the fans, but, it's people will make like such a huge negative deal about it. But I think that lots of us really enjoy how Billy has carried on for Chris. Like, they're such great friends, and he's been doing such a great job in the
And
lives
Chris
that-
asked him to do it. How could people not appreciate that and respect Chris's wishes? And Billy has done a great job. And Billy, you got some balls to fill those shoes. That is like, wow. To be asked that and then do it, kudos to Billy. Really, really good job. And Billy's still very down to earth and the same guy he was when I met him on the Open Your Eyes tours the first time I met him. And he's doing a great job. He really is.
Yeah, definitely. I see we got Eric Mackinson listening from Philadelphia. Thanks for tuning in.
Yeah, thanks for tuning in, Eric. Appreciate it. How about on the Drum Talk TV page? It's easier for you to click over there.
Right.
See if you got any more comments. Then we'll scoot through. We literally have like 6 minutes left.
Right.
Sorry,
so while I'm looking at that, do you have anything else to say about their friendship and collaborations?
You could see the friendship in their photos. If I pull this photo up again, it was a really good relationship. And Billy, having worn more hats with Yes than anybody else. I mean, he wore every hat other than lighting guy and live sound guy and manager. He did everything else. He played bass, he played guitar, he sung, he wrote, he mixed stuff he wasn't on. He wore all these hats, and it's cool that they had such a great relationship. And if you folks have great memories of either Chris and or Billy separately or together in Yes, out of Yes, go ahead and comment. I kind of chimed in with one of mine, which was the Open Your Eyes tour. I thought was really good. And the latter album was like, wow, that was even leaps ahead from that. And of course, Billy was on that. If I had to pick one album that's my favorite album with Chris Squire, the latter is it for me for Billy. And for Chris, if it's a studio album, it's got to be my all-time favorite album, period, and that's Tales from Topographic Oceans. Don't ask Steven to say that because he always trips over. It's like one syllable too many or something weird.
Yeah, no, my answer is exactly the same for both those categories, the latter and Tales, yeah.
Interesting.
Humberto Cortez Silva says Chris was a huge influence on Steve Harris of Iron Maiden.
Yeah, good point. Yeah.
All right. So I don't. We have a bit of Billy news. Should I just scoot through those real quick?
Go ahead.
All right. So in light of the craziness that's been going on in the world, Billy has shared YouTube links to Unify and For the Fallen, which are songs from World Trade's 2017 album Unify. John Anderson has done something similar. He's shared a Ruinous song called Earth Peace, which he did with someone named Austin. John also did a weird one called Here We Go Again, which was too silly, even if he is making a point, but we won't get into that, I guess.
Okay, yeah, I'm not familiar with that yet.
Right. There's a reissue of Circa HQ coming March 25th. That's Circa's second album. That one has Jay Shellen on it, I believe. So it was after Alan left the band. I saw somewhere reliable, but have not yet been able to find confirmation of it, that Circa and So On and Overflow might be reissued March or April. So On is their third album. Overflow is kind of a rarities collection. So I guess we'll keep an eye out, see if that becomes official. And Rozfest have said that Dave Kersner is going to be performing with his, his all-star prog band that includes Billy Sherwood. So that's going to be April 17th in Sarasota, Florida. And apparently Dave Kersner is also going to be on Cruise to the Edge in May, which kind of begs the question of whether Billy and perhaps maybe John Davison could be part of the lineup, maybe.
Yeah.
I guess we'll hear about it. And Billy is also on Dave Kersner's upcoming solo album, The Traveler, which is due May 25th and available for pre-order today, which is Bandcamp Friday. Bandcamp Friday is like the first Friday of each month from like February to May. And like the artists get a bit of a bigger slice of the profit. And so today I bought John Holden's album Capture Light, which features Billy on a few tracks and Oliver Wakeman on a few tracks. It sounds really good. I've been meaning to get it for like 4 years, so like I finally got it.
Cool.
Senior year of college was going on. That was hectic, but yeah, I finally got that.
Nice.
I guess, do you have any other closing thoughts on Billy or Chris or anything else we've talked about?
Gosh, that's a great question because there's so much. I am eager to see what else comes out of Yes over the years and what other things Billy gets involved in. As far as Chris goes, he was actually a big influence on my drumming because because playing to Yes music, and as a drummer you really should be locked in and playing with the bass players, should be playing with each other. And I learned a lot about rhythm and rhythmic articulation and different things listening to him and Bill, and of course him and Alan over the many, many years. I saw Yes maybe, I don't know, 12 or 14 times, collected bootlegs since I was 12. I mean, really paid attention to his playing, and I just can't say enough about how important it would be for a drummer to play to Yes music and not just emulate what the drummer is doing, whether it's Bill or Alan, but listen to what Chris is doing. And, in one way, you could say, his playing evolved over the years, but I don't mean this as a criticism, but it kind of didn't. And what I mean by that is his playing was light years ahead from the first Yes album.
Yeah.
If you compare that with Relayer, Going for the One, if you just scoot through the timeline, it's clear to hear that it's the same guy, and I think that really says a lot from his starting point from when we first heard him with Yes. That's my take. Certainly he evolved. I mean, I'm not an idiot. I know he evolved, but it's not like, oh my gosh, he's a whole different. No, he's not really. And that's what's cool,
Yeah. Michael Leslie says your comment on Chris from a drummer standpoint is spot on. And
thank you.
I also asked, do you think Chris had an influence on Rickenbacker's sales? And my answer is I would think yes.
Absolutely. So, and here's why. Like, Paul McCartney played Rickenbacker. Roger Glover of Deep Purple played Rickenbacker. Geddy Lee, of course. And I think Chris might have played Rickenbacker before Paul McCartney, but I don't think Paul had as much influence. This is my own speculation. I don't think Paul would have had as much influence on Rickenbacker sales simply because his sound wasn't like symbiotic with the Rickenbacker sound. Whereas Chris Squire's sound was the Rickenbacker sound and vice versa. He made that instrument a go-to instrument for bass players who wanted their own sound and that particular sound. I'll never forget a friend of mine, a bass player, Paul Lamb in Opus One. We were in Opus One together, went over to a friend's house, and the friend had posters of the Grateful Dead, and Phil Lesh had this bass with like 8 knobs on it, and my friend looked up and said, wow, 8 knobs, and it still goes doo, 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 doo. Whereas a Rickenbacker, you could fiddle with anything and it still sounds like no other bass. So that's a long answer to yes, I absolutely do agree and feel that that Chris playing the Rick had a huge influence. I think that's exactly why Geddy Lee went to it. And I'm sure I've read that. Roger Clover, like I said, had to be a big influence, but for a slightly maybe different genre, more the rockers rather than the proggers, which aren't always the same. They don't always overlap. Great question.
Yeah. All right. Well, I guess that'll do it. So, so happy birthday to Chris and happy early birthday to Billy. And I'm sure many of us will continue listening to all the works that feature them. And if you'd like to get in touch with us, you can email yesshiftpodcast@gmail.com. Send us your thoughts on our coverage or some episode ideas even. We got some we're going to get to real soon. You can find us on anchor.fm/yesshift, see all the audio platforms we're on, or see the video version like here at facebook.com/yesshift.
This is episode 33. So if you just discovered us, first of all, sorry in advance, but there are 32 other episodes. Check them out, and there's some guests.
Some news episodes in between. Yeah.
Oh yeah, there's all the news episodes, news desk reports, and Oliver Wakeman joins us live right here on March 26th, and I can't wait to talk to Oliver about so many things, including music.
Yeah, it'd be weird if we didn't talk about music with him.
I will throw some of that in there. Thanks, everybody, for following what we do. And like Steve said, email us, give us comments, questions, suggestions for episodes. And we'd love to hear from you. Good, bad, or indifferent.